Hi, my name is Austin Farrell, and thanks again for joining me for this series on Teaching with AI, Practical Guidance for Real Classrooms. In our last recording, we discussed the question, how can AI transform teaching? In this recording, we're going to examine what educators' proper disposition toward AI should be. Now, when we think about learning, we can think about three different areas of learning, and that is knowing, thinking, and doing. AI as a tool is very good at doing, and it is also very good at knowing. Very good might be a stretch to say for doing, right? AI can produce audio files or podcasts. It can actually write essays. AI can produce visual art, right? Now, the quality of those things can be a little dubious at times, but as AI continues to improve as a tool, it will only get better at the doing. AI is also very good at knowing, right? It has a lot of information that it is trained on, and it knows facts. It can produce facts. It can tell you facts. Now, it can also hallucinate and essentially dream up facts and situations that did not happen. But again, it for the most part, it is really good at knowing a collection of facts. Now, AI can also think, right? It can do the thinking part, but AI is limited by the fact that it is artificial intelligence. In one of the other videos in this series, we discussed how AI actually works, what it is. And AI doesn't think like a human. It predicts answers based on what it has learned. So it is not thinking through things in the same way that humans would think through things, right? It's leaning on patterns that it is already familiar with to evaluate information that it currently has. Now, that's subject to a large bias, right? Because of the patterns that it's already trained on that informs the thinking that it does, right? So students and humans actually are in a unique position where we are self-aware and we can ask questions, not just of AI, but in general, as it comes to educational experiences. We can ask questions that are not limited in the same way that AI is. And moreover, right, when we think about where learning lives, while there is learning in knowing, there is learning in doing, through different frameworks in education, such as Bloom's taxonomy or Webb's depth of knowledge, we know that learning lives in the thinking, right? And thinking in different ways, analyzing, evaluating, synthesizing, comparing and contrasting, right? All of these are ways of thinking that are key to learning. And so when we look at our disposition toward AI, we don't want AI to live in the space of thinking. We want AI to live in the space of knowing and to live in the space of doing, right? But the thinking where learning really exists, we want our students to live there. So whenever we use AI within the classroom, we don't want to use it in such a way that it robs our students of the opportunity to do that thinking. Now, this idea was further explored in one of the sessions I attended at the NAGC conference in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And the session was run by Brian Housen of the University of South Carolina and Emily Mofield of Lipscomb University. The session was focusing on students and what they call students' superpowers, right? student superpowers they described as being courage, curiosity, wisdom, and discernment. Now, kind of summarizing what they were sharing in their session, it is that students are that link to learning, right? Putting AI in front of students does not result in learning, but it is allowing students to express these very natural tendencies that they have. When they express those, that is the key to learning, right? So students who are courageous use AI to challenge and push back against their ideas. If we do that as teachers, right, then students can, again, just respond to AI, debate against AI, and that takes their learning deeper, right? Students are naturally curious, and there's creativity and play, there's synthesis and perspective, discovery and finding evidence, and wisdom and drawing meaning, right? These are things that students do. Students do these things when put in situations and contexts. They're constantly doing this in the world around them. And we want to make sure that they are doing that in the classroom. So when we use AI, we want to use AI in a way that allows students to do this, whether that is students being creative with AI or playing with AI, or synthesizing what AI produces, or using AI to discover new things, or making meaning and considering what AI produces. All of these things are ways that students are still the key. They are the way by which learning happens, them expressing these natural skills and strengths that they have. And this is the same for wisdom and discernment, right? When students reflect on what AI produces and the process that AI took to get there, to produce those things. When students express discernment, when they pause in their usage of AI to ask questions during the learning process or the product creation process, these are ways in which students use these superpowers that they have for again, just expressing and experiencing life and educational opportunities and educational spaces. When they use these superpowers, that is how we get to learning. So while these are identified traits that were identified to exist in gifted students, these traits exist in all students to some extent. Maybe some students are not as courageous, but are very curious. Maybe they might not be as discerning, but maybe they are wise and really take the time to reflect. Whatever it may be, we want to identify those strengths that students have in these areas. Specifically, we want to acknowledge that students have these strengths. Students do these things every day, right? They press into challenges or issues. They defend themselves, right? That is courage. They seek and try to understand and make sense of their world by drawing together disparate things, disparate pieces of information to try to see how they connect, right? They're doing that all the time to make sense of the world around them. They are reflecting at times on how they feel and how something may have impacted them, or what is the significance of something in their life. And they can also be very discerning in taking a minute to pause instead of just continuing to move forward when something may feel off or different, or when they're uncertain. So all of this is a long-winded way of saying that we need to keep students at the center of the educational experience. We need to make sure that students are doing the thinking, and that AI is a tool to engage students' courageousness or students' curiosity or students' wisdom or discernment. AI needs to be used to create opportunities for students to display these traits that they have, because in the displaying of those traits, that is how students actually access learning. That is how they get to learning, is by expressing those traits and going through those methods of thought. All right, so thank you again for joining for this recording. The next recording is going to discuss the different use cases and tools for AI. So a very helpful video for those who are really looking to figure out where and how and to implement AI in their classroom and what they can use to do that. All right, catch you all next time. Thanks for joining.